That's right, everybody. It's 1 o'clock. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. I'm wearing my Jet stuff. Anthony still won't wear a Leafs thing to begin with. I totally understand why. But they're leading the Northern Division. We'll get to that in a sec. Welcome to Lightin the Lamp here on ASTV. As always, Anthony Jacob from that NHL Discussion joining me. Anthony, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing really good.
Good to see you, man. So we're going to get right at it. Lightin the Lamp, as always, on ASTV. Hit the like button. Hit the share button. Give us some comments. I mean, we've done 3 or 4 of these. We've got a couple of great people watching all the time. But if you want to chime in on what we're saying, maybe you don't agree with us. Maybe you do agree with us. Maybe you think Anthony needs a haircut instead of going to the gym. Maybe you think I should wear a suit. I don't know. I mean, we'd love to hear what you got to say. But nonetheless, we'll take all tips and we'll take all comments into account. So let's get ready. Let's start with the headlines first, Anthony. Lots of stuff going on the page at NHL.discussion. A lot of Donnybrooks I saw this past week. You seen some good fights out there that you want to touch on real quick?
Yeah, there actually has been a bunch of great duels the last couple of weeks, especially considering we don't see as much fighting, but it seems like when there is a fight, they're usually pretty noteworthy. So I've definitely enjoyed those the last couple of weeks.
Do you think it's weird that the Jets and the Leafs don't have a true fighter on their squad? I mean, Jumbo Joe could throw the mitts if he wanted. Nathan Beaulieu and Tucker Pullman and those guys have done it, and Forbert has done it in the past couple of weeks. But do you think that the fighting, the persona is kind of dwindled away where you still need more skill on the ice as opposed to just having that clear enforcer?
Yeah, well, neither team is really built around too much physicality or throwing the mitts. I mean, I'd still be pretty scared if someone like Adam Lowry were throwing down against me or something like that. But they definitely still have some big players on both teams, but that's definitely not their emphasis. Is definitely not on fighting.
We're not condoning fighting. We're just saying it's still part of the game. I don't know if you ever followed Derek Bugard at all. He had an Instagram post going out, or a Twitter went out yesterday that I saw on TV with regards to him showing 7 to 10-year-olds how to fight. And it was kind of interesting to watch a couple of American broadcasters explain or trying to describe what fighting means to the NHL, but they were way off. I'll just say, go watch the video. It's kind of cute, interesting. I think it's Bugard too. Let's get to the biggest story of the day so far. I mean, this morning, the Montreal Canadiens let go of both Claude Julien and Kirk Muller. For both coaches, this is their second time around with the Habs. Julien was there 03-06. He came back in 2017. He had a bit of a heart condition in 2020 last year. Kirk Muller did the same thing, only he returned just after in 2006. Then he came back in 2016-17 to join as an assistant coach once again. They both get relieved of their duties, Dominic Ducharme, and they've hired Alex Burrows to become part of this coaching staff. What is the latest you've heard, or what do you think of this move for the Montreal Canadiens right now, Anthony?
I was honestly pretty shocked considering how great of a start to the season they had, and they're right neck and neck with the Leafs at the top of the Northern Division, and then all of a sudden, now today they wake up and they're 9 points behind the Leafs, and they're letting go of their head coach. I think we talked earlier in the season about how hot their start was and how lots of those players were performing a lot better than we were expecting them to, and that we were expecting them to fall back down to earth. Now, did we expect it this much? And did we expect that would perhaps lose the job for Claude Julien? Not at all. And I was, even though they've been on a bit of a cold streak, I was still pretty surprised. But I wonder who's going to be the next real head coach. I know they like bringing in the French Canadians, so I wonder if they'll bring in someone like Michel Therrien for the third time, maybe. I'm kidding there, but it seems like they love rotating through those French coaches.
I mean, Kirk Muller has the pedigree of not only being a coach twice, but also a player during his middle years, with the Habs. Now, you talk about their fall from grace, coming back to earth. In the scenario that you see the Montreal Canadiens being in 6th out of 7 teams, not in a playoff position per se, do you see this move being made after a quarter of the season's gone through for Montreal, or was it the fact that they didn't want to see this quick of a fall this early?
Well, I guess it just really depends how management views this team. I know they finished something like 24th in the league last year, and Marc Bergevin, general manager, really thought that he improved this team and that they would be a contender for not only the playoffs, but even to go win some playoff rounds with the additions he made. Lots of other people were more lukewarm, but to start the season, he looked like a genius with some of those moves, bringing in Anderson, Toffoli, etc. And so I really believe that ownership and management is expecting to win this year, even though maybe that's not what the general public thinks of the Canadians. And so I think maybe this is even more than anything Marc Bergevin under the hot seat, and he had to do something. You know, he can't continue to see his Habs free falling down the standings. So I guess for him the easiest move was to axe the coach and see if a new resume will make a difference.
Axing a coach is always the hard step because it's ultimately the players and their efforts on the ice that dictate wins and losses more often than not. Did it have to do anything with the fact that the Senators took 4 points away from the Habs in the last 2 games?
It's been quite the week for the Senators. I know they're still 5-15, but they came back against the Leafs, beat the Jets, and now they got a coach fired too. So although it's been a losing season, they're definitely being a bit of a pain in the butt to the teams around them at times.
The cranky young brothers, we'll call them. I mean, the brother that never got the all the attention. They're the ones that are flying under the radar, causing a ruckus. But we'll leave Montreal aside. As I said, Dominic Ducharme and Alex Burrows are going to join the coaching staff there. Alex Burrows is a French-Canadian speaker, is he not? So he fits into that role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so. And lots of experience for him. He was always a great leader. So I think that's a good addition for the Canadians.
Let's quickly touch on another subject that happened earlier this week. Artemi Panarin taking a leave of absence from the Rangers. Now, there's obviously some discussions with his political views, which we're not going to touch. But do you think there's more to this story that's not being mentioned and it's kept kind of hush-hush knowing certain parties are involved?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to think of this situation. I think it's going to blow over in the next couple of weeks. At least everyone can hope that that's where this heads from here.
His explanation that the allegations are fabricated, opposing political parties that be. I just hope that the family here in North America as well as overseas are safe and they're going to be okay in these coming weeks, and hopefully this thing, like you said, blows over. I'm going to put you in a spot here, Anthony. You're going to wear the hat of the Seattle Kraken. And you've seen a little bit of a noise, a little bit of a skirmish on who wants to coach the Kraken. And that's done by Mr. Bruce Boudreau, who has coached the Wild, who has coached the Ducks, who has coached the Capitals, but he doesn't have a great playoff pedigree. Is he one of the guys you're considering to coach this expansion team come next year?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. He has been excellent in the regular season, and he's gotten some not great teams into the playoffs. I'm someone who tends to believe that playoff struggles it's a small sample. It's 7 games compared to an 82-game season. And yes, there is some decisions that have to be made under pressure that coaches have to make. But in a 7-game series, I don't think they have as much impact as they would in over a full 82 games. So I'm not exactly sure who else is in the running at this point for the head coaching job, but I know that Boudreau has a good pedigree despite some of his struggles come playoff time.
Absolutely. I mean, he definitely has a good win-loss record. He's coached great hockey players in number 8, Getzy, Perry, to name a couple, to name a few. Koivu, I mean, the list it's a pretty good list. But are you a fan of his language, his antics? We've seen him in the Hard Knocks series with the Washington Capitals. Do you like his style of coaching personally, Anthony?
I don't mind it. He's someone who definitely his teams always seem to be high scoring, which maybe is part of the reason why he's had some playoff struggles. But the game's going that way to high scoring, and yeah, he does get fired up every once in a while. But I think teams can use that at times, a little kick in the butt.
He is definitely the F-bomb thrower, that's for sure. And a little bit of fire, a little emotion on the sleeve. You will not be upset with Bruce Boudreau behind a bench. That is for sure. We're going to talk one more quick discussion here before we get to our two favorite teams. What have you noticed? What were your takebacks, or what you're taking from the Lake Tahoe experience this past weekend? A lot of different focuses on whether or not it was a good thing to play those games at all without fans, or what were the final conclusions to playing in the afternoon versus the evening. Did they get it right? Did they not get it right? What did you like most about the outdoor series this past weekend in Tahoe? And what do you think was a learning experience for the NHL and Gary Bettman?
Well, they had. I just saw a tweet today that NBC had some sort of record viewing audiences for both games, and so that's a great thing for the NHL because you know that they are struggling with viewership at times, and so to get a big audience to games like that is great. Even though there's not fans in the stadium, I think it was a great way to showcase the game in a different way that isn't just in an empty building every night. It was pretty disappointing that they had to play the one game in the dark, and it seems like the NHL struggles with details like getting the ice quite right. And it's not the first time it's happened, and I'm not overly surprised. But it's too bad that happened. But it was a great scenery, two great games, and I think it was great for the NHL in general.
No doubt, that first game was interesting. Watching the amount of players falling on the ice. I mean, it was little stubbles, little thing. Like, it reminds you of going out the old Gateway Rink in North Dakota here, and finding a rut in the ice and taking a digger. It's funny seeing professionals, even referees, do the same. But I think they got it right. And like you said, the audiences for both games were tremendous. The landscape was gorgeous. It was absolute serenity. I wish they could have done this game in Lake Louise in Alberta, knowing the temperatures would have been colder. But for some reason, I heard that they couldn't do it because of advertising rights and advertising purposes between the league, the NHL, and Travel Alberta, which was a bit of a far cry. Because Lake Louise would be another great place to do this. Vail, Colorado would be a great place to do this. Lake Placid, New York. But I think all in all, when you think about it, the landscape was one thing, but making sure you do it within a stadium that has better infrastructure and allows the fans to be present once again, which is, I think, the hope in the near future for the rest of this outdoor series, probably next year for the NHL. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I like how scenic it is there, but yeah, that's not going to work going forward just because you need to incorporate fans, and that's why they do it in the big football stadiums and everywhere, just because you can jam pack so many fans into a building. But it was a great spectacle, and if they can somehow pull off things like this in the future, I think it's great for the game, and it's great entertainment.
Absolutely. Let's quickly touch on our two favorite teams, your Leafs, my Jets. Are your Leafs finding ghosts in the closet of past? I mean, they lose to the Senators. They're not having great ends to their games. Are they on a bit of a slide, even though they're leading the Northern Division?
Yeah, they're first in the league, but it's been a couple of bad games the last couple of weeks, and the other night they lost 3-0 against Calgary in a game that they just didn't show up. And going in, I was pretty hyped up because they threw together Tavares, Matthews, and Marner on the same line for the first time, and so I was expecting a big game from the Leafs, but they just didn't show up. And it is a common theme from them to, if they have 3 games a week, okay, well, one of them's kind of a throwaway where they just don't show up, and 2 of the other ones they dominate and blow out the other team. So it was a concerning game, but they were down Jake Muzzin, who is their most consistent defenseman. They're down Joe Thornton, who's been great since coming back from injury, as well as Zach Hyman. And some of those bottom six fours just haven't produced the way they've wanted them to. Like Jimmy Vesey just hasn't been good enough for them. Same with some of those other bottom six guys. So they just need to bring out that effort every night. And even if they don't have it, they need to find ways to win. And they just didn't have anything at all. And I think they had 7 power play opportunities against the Flames, and it was just completely out of whack. Every power play, it seemed like, just went by so fast because the Flames would clear it 2-3 times, and they just couldn't string a couple of good passes together. So concerning game for the Leafs, but they'll definitely have a lot of chances to rebound here in the coming week.
You can't expect a team in 56 game season to win all 56 or be in every game. You're going to have a bit of a letdown, of course. Connor McDavid, Leo Draisaitl leading the league 1 and 2 in points, but there's obviously that number 2 spots going back and forth between Draisaitl and Austin Matthews. Now, Austin Matthews is one of 3 Leafs to have a 16-point game streak. Can you name the other 2, or at least another one of them?
Oh, I saw it on
I knew you saw it.
I saw it the other day, but I couldn't name you who they are.
Well, I know one of them is ex-Winnipeg Jet, ex-Toronto Maple Leaf, Eddie Olczyk. He's one of them. I don't remember the second one. I think the second one's Daryl Sittler.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
So there you go. So he's in small company. Austin Matthews has been on fire. I mean, talk about his offensive prowess. I mean, is it because he's playing who he's playing with, or is it because he's just that good?
He has just been that good this year. And him and Marner have found chemistry to a level that they just didn't have before. And before they were both great players, but this year they've come together and been an absolute two-headed monster. Every game it seems like those two are the Leafs' best players, whether they have it or not. Even against the Flames, Matthews hit a post. He had about 3 scoring chances in every period. And despite the timing for those two were just, a tiny little bit off, and that's why they didn't score. But it wasn't like they weren't creating chances. So it seems like every night those two are getting chances. It seems like Matthews is scoring every game. I mean, he leads the league by six goals at this point, and those two are just absolutely spectacular right now. And the Leafs certainly hope that their hot streak continues.
Austin Matthews pegged for a plus-minus of 44 goals this season. You could take in the over or the under on
that? Definitely under. I'd be if you could get 35, that would be pretty impressive. 40 would be a bit of a stretch, I think, just because it's so hard to score that high of a clip for an entire season, and especially with how high their power play percentage is right now. I think once that comes down to earth a bit, I think so will some of Matthews' goals. But if you were to score 40, that would be unbelievable.
That's a pretty impressive number, no matter in the shortened season. You talk of duos in the league. We go back to the Blackhawks with Mikita and Hall. We can go to the 80s with Messier and Anderson, or Gretzky and Curry, of course, and Lemieux and Yager and Kane and Taves. And these duos are pretty special when they can find that chemistry. I mean, we've got 2 really good ones in Canada between Draisaitl and McDavid, Matthews and Marner. Would there be one in Winnipeg, do you think? Do you think it would be like the Scheifele-Connor connection, or do you think it would be somebody else?
Well, I think a couple of years ago it was Scheifele and Wheeler, but I think Wheeler's taken a bit of a step back since then. Will it become Connor and Scheifele? They haven't played together all the time, so that's something that isn't quite there. So I don't know if they have a pair that's quite on that level, but certainly they have some players who could, if they continue to develop, turn into that deadly duo that we were talking about.
The Jets finished their road trip, their 4-game road trip in Vancouver. Laurent Brossoit, did you have a chance to watch his game in Vancouver? And if so, what was impressive about his shutout?
Yeah, he was just very calm. Seemed like a very good game from him. But I was very interested to see that in Pierre-Luc Dubois' first game back, that he was on the top line with Scheifele and Wheeler. He got 2 goals, 3 points. Did I think he was outstanding away from that? Not really, but I was really impressed. I thought Blake Wheeler probably had his best game of the year against the Canucks there. He was just making a lot more plays at 5-on-5 with those two. So I wonder how that's going to look moving forward. I know Paul Maurice said that he's not going to be a career left winger for us. So at some point he's going to move back to center, but certainly 3 points in his first game back is nothing to scoff at.
I think it's just one of those moves where it's trying to get him some confidence under his wings, only because he hasn't played a lot of games this season. And when you haven't played a lot and you're itching to get at it, the last thing you want to do is go into a 10-game slump where you're not scoring and you're trying too hard. So, I mean, anybody or most players, if you put them with Scheifele and Connor, or Scheifele and Wheeler, they're going to score goals. And I think that's what PLD was meant to do, especially that overtime winner. I mean, I turned the TV off early. I'm not going to lie. I could only stay up for a period and a half, but I thought it was done for. That third period must have been crazy good, especially with that 21st 30 seconds in overtime with PLD, with that rush along the left side and sliveling up the blocker side. Pretty awesome. We go into a little bit of home stretch playing Montreal. Do we catch Montreal on off the schneid because they're not playing so well now?
Yeah, it's definitely a better time to be playing Montreal. The Jets had all those games against Ottawa, and we were fearing having to play Montreal later in the schedule, but now all of a sudden Montreal is on the downslide. So it seems like the Jets have kind of had the luck of the draw so far in getting to play the team that's on the fall more often than not.
The Canucks had the Oilers right where they want them, and then they gave it up last night, losing to the Edmonton Oilers. Is Vancouver just having a confidence issue right now?
They're having troubles pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, goaltending, defending, getting depth scoring, getting their systems right, their special teams. Nothing seems to be working right now in Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver is having a bit of an issue. I think it's really been great for Edmonton to snack on them. I think Montreal is coming back to earth. And do you see the Jets kind of staying in that third position, jockeying with Edmonton, knowing that, once this season's all through, they should be battling for the second and third spot?
They kind of seem to be the more consistent team out of Canada. All the other Canadian teams seem to be so inconsistent, and we weren't especially expecting that from the Jets. But so far, they've put together a very solid season, and they haven't had that 5-game slide like the other Canadian teams have yet. So I think if they can stay away from that and just keep going how they are, then they will stay in that third spot or somewhere around there.
It certainly looked like the Jets could have had a 3 or 4 game slide early this season, because coming out of the gates, their first 40 minutes of some of these games isn't the greatest, Anthony. I mean, they don't talk much about the game, but you watch the way they play. They're outshot 2-1 or 35-20. And then for some way, somehow, they're able to score 3 goals in a third period to get a single point, or even steal one in overtime, which is truly amazing for a team. And they say that, I mean, you don't build luck. Good teams just make luck, but also good teams find ways to win, at least still stealing points. Do you think that the luck might run out for the Jets, or do you think it's something that's going to continue throughout the season for them?
Well, we've kind of been saying that the last 2 years is, when is this luck going to get out? When are they going to start losing games where they're getting heavily outshot? When are they going to start getting unlucky on those bounces, which they honestly have been unlucky at times, getting some bad bounces late to lose games. But it just seems like they just there's I don't know, they're finding ways to win games that maybe they shouldn't be, and that's very impressive that it's now going on in 2 seasons where they find ways to win games that they probably shouldn't be.
No, I totally agree. Well, enough talk about our teams. Let's get our focus on the task at hand. The Central Division. Last week we talked about the West. Now we're going to go to the Central. My biggest surprise has to be the Florida Panthers sitting on top. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you pegged them as a team that's going to win the Central.
Yeah, I was pretty down on them going into the season. They traded away a bunch of good players and brought in a bunch of very cheap free agent options. Those include guys like Carter Verhaeghe, Anthony Duclair, Alex Wenberg, all guys who I wasn't convinced could make an impact. Now Verhaeghe and Duclair on their top line, they're close to a point per game, and they don't even play on the first power play. All those points are coming 5-on-5, so they've played very well with Barkov. And then Huberdeau's doing his thing, putting up points on the second line with Wenberg, and it's just been they've gotten a lot of offense from a lot of places that not many people expected them to get. I'm still a little lukewarm on the blue line. I'm not sure that Aaron Ekblad is the ace that the Panthers think he is. Mackenzie Weegar's taken a bit of a step back after a great year last year, and certainly goaltending is still a question mark because Bobrovsky hasn't been great again this year. Drieger has been. They still don't really know. Do they play the $10 million goalie? Do they play the hot young guy? That's a bit of a question mark. I still have questions on the blue line. I have questions if this team can continue to get offense from these cheap free agent guys they signed. But right now, things are very good, and they look like they can stick around with Tampa Bay and Carolina at the top of the division.
Carolina's right behind them, just 1 point. And the Blackhawks, amidst all of their missing players, including Johnny Taves and Kirby Dach, they've got a rookie goaltender leading the charge for them too. And they were sitting atop the Central for a couple of days as well. Do you like what Chicago's done? Will they consistently stay there? Do you see them falling out of the top four?
I was watching them against Columbus last night, and I was thinking, are the Blackhawks good? And I think the answer to that is no, they're not good. But are they terrible? Probably not that either. Going into the season, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league. But even though they've shipped out all these guys and they're getting older, somehow this management group just continues to find these hidden gems out of nowhere. Last season, it was Dominic Kubalik, who came in and was one of the best rookies in the league. And he's scoring again this year. This year, it's been Poos Suter, who's been excellent. He's been their first line center playing with Kane and DeBrincat. He's came out of nowhere this year. They have more guys as well, like Brandon Hagel, guys who probably you've never heard of before they came into the NHL, and now they're making an impact. So are the Blackhawks good? I don't think so. Could they potentially snag the fourth spot in the division to make the playoffs? I think they potentially could, because the Stars right now are not looking very good. They're on the downfall. They've missed a lot of players and a lot of games to COVID. And so if the Blackhawks can stay hot for now, perhaps they could make that fourth spot in the division.
I look at the Dallas Stars, you mentioned them real quick, as the boxing match that's been just not in their favor at all. I mean, first of all, they get knocked down by COVID. And then they get knocked down because of weather, inclement weather that shuts down all of Texas, basically. So now they're missing games because of weather. What else is Dallas going to have to face in terms of adversity this season? We don't know. But once they get a third one, they're going to be TKO'd from Tokyo, basically. And I don't see them even reaching a chance to get into the top four. I do see Chicago battling with Columbus for some reason, because you talked about the Panther roster. And I looked at the Blue Jacket roster, and it's got that similar look, except they have, you take out Barkov for the Panthers, you insert Patrick Laine, but you've got two players on the Blue Jackets blue line that's fantastic, in Werenski and Seth. Their goaltending, I mean, Elvis is there. I look at the Blue Jackets just maybe finding a way to sneak in. Obviously, with the trade, Roslovic and Laine have way more points than PLD, only because they've played more games. Laine hasn't missed a game in a while because he hasn't talked back to one of his coaches in a while, so he's doing okay with that. But I really think the Blue Jackets can challenge for that fourth spot with Chicago.
I'm not as hot on the Blue Jackets as you are. Last year they were, I think, a better team, a lot more scrappy. They ended up beating the Leafs in that round robin game, or that 5-game series. But this year I don't see the same team. They're missing Zach Werenski right now from the blue line due to injury. I haven't really loved Seth Jones this year. And then goaltending, they have two young guys. They've played well, but they're not the guys you can rely on 100% of the time up front. Some of the moves just haven't worked out. Max Domi right now is playing on their fourth line. I think he took a couple penalties, gave the puck away for a goal against last night. He got benched for some time as well. That move hasn't worked out. I think Josh Anderson just brought a lot more to the Blue Jackets than Max Domi is. And just that center group I don't think is strong enough. I know Jack Roslovic's playing great right now, but I don't like him matching up against any team's number one center going deeper into the season just because of the strength and the experience factor that Roslovic doesn't have. And to have Patrick Laine, kind of those two is right now they're their two go-to guys. We've seen that in Winnipeg, they need to be sheltered at times just because they can't keep up defensively. And the Blue Jackets are a team that is supposed to be defensive oriented. And when two young guys who are kind of more sheltered are leading your team offensively, I think that's a bit of a problem. So I don't know if I'd say that for me, if you take those top three teams, I'm more liking the Blackhawks or the Stars to take that fourth spot instead of the Blue Jackets.
Okay, I expect that. We haven't talked much about Nashville or Detroit. Now, Nashville's sitting 6th out of 8 right now. The Wings are taking the bottom spot. They play in the basement a lot. We don't really expect too much out of the Red Wings this year. They just don't have the team assembled to compete. But the Predators and as well as the Lightning, I mean, these are perennial playoff teams. Do we see either of them not making the playoffs this year?
The Predators, I don't think are going to even come close to the playoffs. They have not looked good at all this year. They have Philip Forsberg, who's been a point per game player for them. Roman Josi, who's been pretty much a Norris caliber defenseman. And then after that, it's been a black hole. They have the two $8 million centers in Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, who have completely fallen off a cliff or just disappeared since they came to Tennessee. And just other guys as well who aren't performing. Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm aren't as good as they were in recent seasons, and that makes their blue line a bit of a cause for concern. And the biggest problem for them, though, is just scoring. After Forsberg, they don't have anyone else who they can rely upon offensively. They thought that locking up Duchene and Johansson would shore up all their center issues going forwards, but that just hasn't happened whatsoever, and I can't see that turning around the way they're playing. For the Red Wings, yeah, you're right. They just don't have a team assembled to win. Instead of playing their young players, they have a ton of veterans and a ton of veterans who are past their prime. Larkin and Mantha are at about half a point per game, which looks bad on paper, but you can only judge a team so much or players on a team so much that are struggling that heavily. And for the Lightning, this is a team that's missed Kucherov the whole season. They've missed Cirelli and Stamkos for parts of the season. I'm still very high on the Lightning. I think they have a very good chance of going back to back just because they have the scoring, but everyone plays so well, and it just seems like they're almost a perfect team, just the way it's constructed up and down, the way they have the bottom six forwards who compete hard. I really like the Lightning still, even though they haven't been quite as hot to this season as they finished last year.
So you're sticking with the Lightning. You think they're going to make it all the way? Okay, I'll give that to you. I want to bring up a player that we talked about last week that now plays for the Blues that was potentially a player that Florida was getting rid of in Mike Hoffman, not re-signing him. Do you think that is the change in the locker room that Florida needed to move forward? Or is it the fact that they've just got a really good, hot young goaltender?
Yeah, I hate to throw locker room questions out there just because I'm not in there. You're not in there. to see all the interactions that happen on a day-to-day basis. Sure, we hear some things or see some things, but I couldn't tell you who's the problem in the locker room, and I'd hate to throw someone out of the bus that isn't meant to be, but there was rumors of Hoffman being a problem in Ottawa. And certainly his work ethic was questioned in Florida. So I think definitely looking at the stats going into the season, you thought, well, Hoffman's a perennial 30-goal scorer, and Duclair and Verhaeghe have kind of been bottom six guys most of their career. Well, it seems like once they were thrown into bigger roles, they were able to outperform what guys like Hoffman brought, and even more. So certainly the Panthers are this, I'd say, the surprise team of maybe not even the Central Division, but perhaps even the NHL altogether.
Did the NHL get it right putting these 8 teams in the Central Division? I mean, you look at some of these teams. I mean, Detroit to Tampa, that's a pretty far flight. Dallas to Tampa, pretty far flight. When you look at some of these other teams, I mean, the Northern Division aside, I mean, look at the East, West, and Central. Do you think some teams should have been put elsewhere?
Well, I guess the main thing for them was getting the geography right, so they could reduce travel and contact as much as possible. The Pacific and the Central both aren't super strong. I think they're both very top heavy, like you said. I think there's 3 teams in this division, and then there's a big drop off. I think
So
Tampa.
who are your 3 then? Let's clarify the air here.
I'd say for me, Tampa Bay and Carolina are like the 2 cup contenders from this division. I think Florida's a good team, maybe not a cup contender. And then I'd say there's kind of a lump of the rest with Detroit at the bottom of that pile. That's how I put it.
Okay. No, I could agree with you. I mean, you've definitely got your top 3 there. Lightning, the Hurricanes, for sure. And then you can see a bit of a drop, and the Wings are separately in tier 3 there. What is your thought? I mean, does Dallas play a full 56 games, or are they going to be one of those teams that just, I mean, they're sitting at 12 or 13 games played up until now. And you got teams like the Leafs that have played 21 or 22 already. So, I mean, do you see them finishing the season, or do you see them having that win percentage taken into account?
The NHL made some announcements yesterday. I think they rescheduled 30 games or something like that. Okay. So I think they're still hoping they can get all 46 in. I think I heard yesterday there's only 76 days left in the season right now. So it's going to be tight, but I think the way they made the schedule is so that if they were in a situation like that they could push back the playoffs a week or 2, because I'm sure if at all possible, they want to get every single game in. So I'm expecting them to finish with 56 games played.
So that's our take on the Central Division. Anything else you want to discuss before we move on?
I think we covered it pretty well.
Very good. So we've got the Jets taking on a limping Montreal team. Who's Toronto playing this week?
I'm actually not sure. I'd have to look that up quickly.
You don't know who your Leafs are playing, Anthony. Oh, my gosh. Is it even going to matter, or do you just expect W's all the way through?
Well, I couldn't expect that quite as much lately. Looks like they play Flames 1 more, Oilers for 3. So going into Alberta for the Leafs this coming week.
So it should be an interesting weekend for both teams. Once again, this is a rare home time for the Jets because they still play, I think, 75% of their next 15 games on the road. So that'll be interesting to see. Follow us on NHL.discussion on Instagram. That's where you'll find Anthony and all of his hundreds of thousands of followers. We had a lot of Donnybrooks. We had a lot of discussions about some trophy work. What else are we working on that page, Anthony?
Like I said last week, I'm coming closer to doing some expansion previews and looking at which players, which teams might protect, and how that could end up making the Seattle Kraken look next season. So that's perhaps something that we could look further into once I get started with that list.
Should be a good time. I'm interested. You like the Kraken emblem?
I do. I like the emblem. I like the name. I like the colors. I know it's a bit different, but I'm all for something a little more that stands out a little more. So I like them.
At NHL.discussion Instagram. Follow Anthony. He's got some great insight as always. Thanks for joining me today, Anthony. We look forward to doing this next week as we look at the Eastern Division, the less traveled division, but a lot of those old school rivalries. A lot of New Yorks, a lot of New Jerseys. We'll touch on Buffalo. We'll see if Eichel gets traded. You never know. Things could happen out on East, right, Anthony?
You never know.
You never know. This has been Lightin the Lamp here with my boy Anthony Jacob at NHL Discussion. Thanks for watching. We'll hopefully get a hold of you next week. Remember, Wednesdays, 1 o'clock, we touch on everything hockey, as well as next week, the Eastern Division. Thank you. Take care and have a great rest of the week, Anthony.
You too. Have a good one.
Right on. We'll see you guys later. Thank you.